right now in the cities, in the villages, who are at that very moment trying, to help their neighbors, to help the people who need the most. And what we are doing in Ukrainian Volunteer Service is basically we are trying to engage as many Ukrainians as it is possible after the Russian invasion did anything, like for social good. Many of them actually thought that you don't have to volunteer, it's okay just to work and build your family. And after February 24, they all signed up and they started to ask, what can I do in my small city, in my village, in my town for my neighbors? What's also interesting is that even before the war, we had a great volunteer movement in Ukraine. We had a vibrant civil society, in different spheres, helping the homeless people, the kids, education and stuff. But what actually changed during the last 3 months is that volunteering became a way of living, not only for civil society actors, but also for all kinds of people, starting from people who are right now like 10, 11 year old, and they go to us and say, okay, I want to volunteer, what can I do? But also the ones who are right now in their 80s, even in their 90s, who are asking, okay, I can bake, where can I, who needs the bread that I can bake? And also what's really inspires me a lot right now is that volunteers are really fast in their reactions to the crisis. Because of course, like when the invasion started, like nobody was ready for that. Like there were many international organizations who started working really fast. There was the government who started to communicate, but the people, especially the ones who are living in the southern parts of Ukraine, in the eastern parts, they were not ready for that. And they just started, to go and try to do something, and actually by the end of the second or third week their activities became not just random trying to help, but actually in an effective way solving those cases. And of course, it's not only about the territories that are free right now, but it's also about the situation in the occupied territories, because right now we have many cities and even more small villages that are occupied. And in many of those cities, especially in Donetsk and Luhansk region, there is not many young people who are left, because many of them had to evacuate, had to bring their kids, to go to the more safe spaces. And basically we have a situation where in the occupied cities, on the one hand, we are seeing a lot of people who need help, the people with disabilities, the people who cannot leave, cannot evacuate. On the other hand, we have these activists who are helping and volunteering, even though it's not safe for them personally, physically, because Russians are kidnapping Ukrainian activists all the time. And just one story that I wanted to share, a really short one, we have a volunteer in Nova Kakhovka. It's in Kherson Oblast. It's a city that was occupied for a long time right now. It's a city where they try to, sell goods for rubles instead of hryvnias. It's a city where most of the civil society activists had to escape and go to more safe cities of Lviv, of Kiev, because they were just afraid whether they will be alive or not. And in these cities, we have a group of 20 volunteers. They're not public, they don't have social media, they deleted like everything, they have just one Twitter account. And those people are buying food, making those food packages, and going, and serving those packages to the families with kids who have no salary and no opportunity to buy overpriced goods. And when I'm thinking about Ukraine right now, like the first word that I'm thinking is bravery, but like the second word that I'm thinking about is actually volunteering. Because everyone in Ukraine right now is volunteering and doing so many different things, to help people around them.
Thank you very much. I believe it's a really strong message, bravery and volunteering. And now I'd like to turn, Olga, to you, because for volunteers to help, they need humanitarian aid. Sometimes they don't have something they can give in Ukraine, they can't find it. And they're also looking for the aid. And I want to ask you the question. You've been working since the first day of the war, started working this. If there's a difference from how you felt the international community helping, in terms of amounts of help, of number of people helping, is there a difference from the first day until the 90 days today?
I would probably start with a confession. I never believed in volunteering. I work as a professional director of the charitable foundation. I'm a director of Elena Pinchuk Foundation. And I never thought that volunteering can be a sustainable thing. I never believed that you can build a team of people from volunteers who will come to work every day at 9 and will go back at 10. And you tell them on Sunday, don't show up, have rest. We need you, with all your resource. And they just show up and they just text you, open the warehouse of Help Ukraine. We are here. I don't know how it works, but I think that Ukraine became the nation of volunteers, the example of people who is volunteering, because we do understand that the only way to have the victory and to save Ukraine is to do something that you can do a little bit more. People put on hold their careers. People put on hold all their lives. And they're not counting money. They're not thinking about their time. They're volunteering non-stop, doing something to bring this victory. And every time when I'm getting upset, asking my friends who are in the front line, what I'm doing here in Poland and Help Ukraine, I can go and save lives. They say, we need logistic support. Stay where you are. We need your help. That's how we win the war. And I know they need us over there. What has changed over these 3 months is, at the very beginning, we were flooded with shipments. People were happy to support Ukraine. Now we're observing the decrease in humanitarian aid because a lot of people think that they've helped already. So it's done. And the situation is that the humanitarian crisis is deepening. The amount of humanitarian aid is going down. Because right now we need food more than we needed at 3 months. Everybody's watching the news, know how Russia is taking away our supplies, and people lost their jobs, they don't have access to food. And we have thousands of requests for basic stuff like food, medicine, and hygiene. And at the moment we have a decrease. Everybody, all warehouses, and we are not a separate story. We have a better stock now, that's true. We have a better quality because we can communicate to our donors what we need. It's not just, loads of clothing. And somebody had this joke, we had so many sweaters that probably Americans believe that we will go to Siberia. That's very true. Sweaters were, everywhere in all warehouses. Now we have a better stock. It's tactical medicine, it's medicine, and we can get things that we request, but it's going down. So we need everybody to share the message. Ukraine needs support. The war is not over. The humanitarian crisis is deepening every day. Please do not stop. If you helped Ukraine, that doesn't mean it's over. We need your help. We need your support. And imagine a single mother in Ukraine, in nearly, maybe deoccupied city with a child. She cannot explain why she cannot get food. And she didn't have time to escape and evacuate. She's just there because she's never ever traveled anywhere in her life. Imagine her explaining to her child why they were bombed and why they don't have food. That's very important for Ukraine to get this support, to get through that, to get to the point of the victory, and then we will all unite in rebuilding the country. And it's going to be fun, it's going to be joy, I promise you. But now we need your support.
Nick, let's start with you. And you have founded and you're co-chairman of the largest California-based charity focused on helping Ukraine. Tell us the story of Nova Ukraine, of your charity. Tell us the results, the impact, the ethos behind it. What drove you to start it? And obviously that was years ago, but what drove you to take it to this extremely high level at this point, this enormous amount of funds raised, of humanitarian help, of volunteers mobilized? Please give us the impact and the ethos of your organization.
Thank you. I'm first time in Davos and I'm a little overwhelmed. But I want to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to this amazing place and to the organizers, all amazing women team, Svetlana, Elena, Alex, and Yaroslava. It's like a sun, it shines, it warms our hearts, and it attracts all of the best people in Davos to come here. Let's give them a hand. And to that, to that, I want to include my respect for these many organizations on the panel. You're doing amazing work. And there's so many other organizations that probably should be here with us, right? There is so many volunteers. Everyone is helping. I can say my story. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a politician. I'm an engineer. So I'll say it how I'm thinking it in my head. I was deeply affected when Russia first seized Crimea, and in 2014 we started first Euromaidan San Francisco, a more political organization that lobbied for Ukraine to join Europe and to oust Yanukovych as president, and then we founded the charity Nova Ukraine with the same folks that founded Euromaidan. There was 15 directors at the time. And for 8 years, we've been building this organization, focusing on building civil society in Ukraine and sponsoring education initiatives, humanitarian aid, fighting corruption. Then, when invasion started, and I took the leave of absence from Google, we kind of kicked it in overdrive, and we started fundraisers, we started street action in San Francisco, and we started coordinating with other cities in America. And the people that we're able to attract to do this, because it's not me or even our board of directors, it's really 400 volunteers in the US and Canada. It's 4,000 volunteers on the ground in Ukraine and in all regions, 25 regions of Ukraine. It's 109,000 people that donated to us through various platforms. And you know, our current total should be updated this week is about $33 million. And we've benefited from the fact that we're Silicon Valley technology folks. Most of us work in tech, and we know how to use technology, and we applied it to the problem of helping Ukraine and fundraising for Ukraine. That includes Facebook, a company where I was an early employee before it went public. I used to run cybersecurity efforts for Facebook. I now do that at Google. But we started doing fundraisers on Facebook, and then we started connecting to Facebook Ukrainian employees and asked them to donate their ad credits, which turns out they can do, and run ads on Facebook to bring more and more people to these fundraisers. And now our Facebook page reaches over 8 million people. So we started spreading stories about Ukraine and try to touch people's hearts so they would actually donate to Ukraine, because I found that people only donate if they trust you and if they care. So we publish stories so they would care, and then we would try to find a way to get them to trust us through someone else they trust, or by publishing very detailed, transparent reports and photos and videos of how quickly the help that we help acquire gets to Ukraine. So that gets us to today, where we've been able to help over 1.7 million people on the ground, and we count folks that we feed, provide hot meals to, or evacuate. There's more than 20,000 that we evacuated from the war zones. The refugees that we help host, or the first aid kits that we buy and send to Ukraine. So main directions of Nova Ukraine have been food, medicine, help to refugees, and rebuilding infrastructure, which is so important right now as Ukraine starts to reclaim our territories and liberate them. But a lot of them are destroyed. Like, I'm from Kharkiv, and my school has been bombed. And the university where my mom was a professor of English has been hit as well. And we are paying, we created a group of volunteers called Helping Hands, who were the first volunteer group that entered liberated Irpin and Bucha and Gostomel, and they're helping clean up the debris. And we've thought about how can we create jobs in Ukraine, because that's our key. We don't want to just raise money, spend it, and you know, see the kind of lull in donations, and as the world gets tired, no longer be able to help. So we started thinking about investing, doing microloans for startups, or funding factories in Ukraine to provide food for free that our volunteers distribute. Let me pause there and pass it on.
Thank you so much, Nick. That's so impressive. Thank you for what you're doing. Pavlo, Ukrainian World Congress has always had a focus on humanitarian, helped immensely after the invasion in 2014 in mobilizing communities and assistance for Ukraine throughout the globe. This new campaign, United with Ukraine, takes it to a whole new level. Can you share with us everything we need to know and understand about United with Ukraine?
Sure. Thanks, Lena. Thank you for inviting me. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to share with you, I often do interviews, as many of you do, and often people ask me, so what's going to happen? And I said, well, Ukraine's going to win. Why do you think that? I said, Ukraine's going to win because of its people. It's people. And quite frankly, that's the source of my personal energy, is all of you. Because it's amazing the volunteerism, the passion, the dedication, the commitment that the Ukrainian people have to win, to succeed. So I wanted to first of all thank all of you. And I want to thank the fabulous women leaders that we have here. I mean, Davos, Ukraine House wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for a passionate group of professional women. So I want to thank all of you as well. And a big congratulations. So just briefly, one of the key attributes of the Ukrainian World Congress is bringing together multiple communities. Lena mentioned it, over 60 countries around the world. Our objective is to coordinate, and our communities have been doing huge amounts of humanitarian effort, whether it was on the border with refugees in Romania, Hungary, Moldova, Poland. The Ukrainian cultural centers, the Ukrainian community organizations have opened up their homes to do all of that. There are medical missions being organized. There's humanitarian aid being raised. It's a huge network of very important initiatives are going on around the world. And our role really is to help to coordinate, to help unify, and to create a common message as a unified global Ukrainian community. And that's why I'm looking forward to working with everybody here on this stage, because we are one Ukrainian people. And that's really important that we work together as a unified front, because we'll be much more successful doing that. In terms of Unite with Ukraine was a campaign that we started right after the war broke out. We were looking at humanitarian initiatives even before the war broke out, but then we quickly realized that Ukraine needs to win the war. That's got to be one of the key focuses. And in terms of all of our community organizations, a lot of people were helping on the humanitarian side, helping refugees, which is extremely, extremely important. But one area that was really missing was helping the defenders of Ukraine. And we saw, and when I met the primarily women and children coming over the border from Poland, as I'm sure many of you have, they're saying, help protect my husband, my son, my father, my brother who's fighting in Ukraine. They don't have anything. They don't have protective gear. They don't have helmets. And so we realized that that's a very important unfilled need. So we started Unite with Ukraine, which is focusing on supporting the defenders of Ukraine. We've had some initial successes. We've raised and delivered over $20 million worth of equipment. And that ranges from, again, helmets, IFAC goggles, night vision goggles, drones, other communications equipment. So we're really focusing on that. One of the key aspects is we immediately set up a logistics team in Poland, and we have been working with other organizations there, HelpUkraine and others, to see if we can coordinate. But it was incredibly important to grab, first of all, experienced logisticians. Number two is experienced military advisors. So we have military advisors through a stakeholder strategic advisory council, which is being headed by a group of former NATO generals. That are providing us that advice. We have on-the-ground people that are delivering this, and the key was fast delivery. And as soon as we raised the money, we were procuring and delivering right to the front lines, right to on the front lines, whether it was in near Irpin, in Kyiv, in Mykolaiv, all over the country. And so we need to continue to do that. And so that's really the focus of Unite with Ukraine. One of the key aspects also is to bring together communities. And we've had very strong grassroots support. There have been initiatives like the St. Javelin initiatives, and the founder here, Christian Boris, is here with us, partnered with us. They said, we want the St. Javelin symbol to be part of the United with Ukraine objectives. And so all of their crowdsourcing, all their funding is coming to help the defenders of Ukraine. I want to thank them for that. And there's lots of organizations that want to get on board. So we want to bring this coalition together and continue to do this, because we are seeing a strong need here. A lot of the military support that is going to Ukraine is not going to, unfortunately, the territorial defense organizations. We're hearing that still today, and it still is very important. We need to make sure that those sons, those fathers, those husbands return back to their families alive. One of the things I really want to call upon in this panel, and to my fellow panelists, plus to the entire global community of volunteers and friends of Ukraine, let's work together. There's so much we can do much more effectively together. We're finding still there's pockets, and I don't consider, for example, a Nova Ukraine a pocket. They're a strong movement, and we will be talking about working together. But there's little groups of a few people getting together, and they're raising money to buy 10, 20, 30 bulletproof vests. That's very, very important. But you'll be much more successful if we unite together, and we can deliver that much more cost effectively, quickly, without all the different issues that always come about. So let's unite together. Let's unite with Ukraine.
And just to add one thing to that, just big support for uniting, and I commit right here that I will bring the matter of joining United World Congress to our board right after this meeting.
This is breaking news, folks. This is breaking news.
And I want to follow up on the thing, like for example, Olga, with you. You're saying that you receive many requests as of today for humanitarian aid. Here in Davos, we have an international audience, and could you say, like, what are the key issues you requested today? Like, what actually Ukraine needs now today in terms of humanitarian aid?
Yeah, I will speak more about humanitarian aid, but, what Nick mentioned, actually, we need to start thinking one step ahead. While attracting more humanitarian aid to Ukraine to save lives today, we need to think what we can do for people to provide for themselves. We need to start thinking how our women who will return to Ukraine will change the profession. What will they do? We don't need that many, middle-class managers anymore. So how we will, adapt them to a new world? How we will work with trauma, the First Lady said, because, before you step into your new job and new role, you have to treat the trauma that you had. So it's lots of questions, and I think that we should think in parallel, one step ahead, what we can do for people in Ukraine to start, providing for themselves, and what we can do before they start doing that. And before they start doing that, the number one request in Ukraine is food. I hate to say that because it's heartbreaking. The hunger is heartbreaking. My grandmother went through the Second World War. And I always thought she was exaggerating. All my childhood, I was raised in the context of war, and I was absolutely sure war will never, ever happen in my life because it was so horrible. And I thought, why is he telling me all this story? It's not going to happen to me because it's never again story. And she kept telling about that. The war she went through impacted all her life. She was saving, she was afraid, she was always hunger, and she was always afraid of something happening. I don't want my country to be like that. That's why I want people in Ukraine to have food now and to go through this very hard period as smooth as possible. So we need food in Ukraine, canned food. We keep telling that. We need, food that can fill people right now, that they can ready to eat food. We need medicine. The request is very high. Even if you think that you already delivered a lot, it's not enough. We need tactical medicine, and I know that a lot of protective means that we need. We don't do that, but I know that it's needed, and please look for organizations you trust, establish contacts, check where it goes, and keep doing that. This is a priority of requests that we see right now in Ukraine. Ukrainians are also request a lot of help outside of Ukraine, but we are concentrating on those that are in Ukraine and trying to do two things in parallel. We are also looking at increasing medical support in Ukraine, and the First Lady already mentioned that. The prosthesis is the next big thing in Ukraine. We need to think about the hospital that can do prosthesis in Ukraine, because we can't keep sending people abroad all the time. It's going to be over sooner or later. So we need to establish our own high-quality medical system in Ukraine and serve our people in Ukraine. So a lot of issues. Think about what is needed today, provide for that, and at the same time think what is next. because, you know, the next step, how we can help people to provide for themselves. And yes, the war happened to us, so we just need to go through that with the minimum trauma for women, children, and Ukrainians.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take off on one really important point that Olga made, and that was about verifying and trusting. Because one challenge that we faced in 2014 was the Russian propaganda machine tried to convince the global community, don't give Ukraine support because they're going to steal it. And Elena was on the front lines of this effort, where she actually supervised, together with many volunteers in Ukraine, the provision of, for example, Canadian military equipment to the front lines. Where later they're saying, well, no, you know what, this is going in the wrong hands, it's going to the black market. Lena and others were able to say, no, we witnessed it. We witnessed it going to the front lines. Same applies here. And we have to be careful that the Russian propaganda machine does not try to dissuade by discrediting all these humanitarian efforts. And that's why our approach has always been trust but verify. So everything that we're getting into Ukraine, we have a verification loop to make sure that A, it gets there, and B, we can then demonstrate to our donors and those that are potentially susceptible to the Russian propaganda that says, no, we can verify that it's coming through. That's really incredibly important for all humanitarian aid that's going into Ukraine now and into the future.
That's a very right message, and if you like, I want to follow up with all other speakers. Like, for the international community, what would be your suggestion? How to verify? How to choose the organization to support? How to find volunteers to support? You know, how do you do that? Please advise.
Yeah, I would like to continue on that, and it's really great that we covered this topic because, of course, for international communities, sometimes it's really hard, you know, to kind of understand what's happening in the country, especially like for the people who just started, you know, to follow and try, you know, to look at the organizations that are here. And what we are seeing right now is that basically we have those thousands of grassroots initiatives, like small civil society organizations and charitable foundations who are working really closely in their neighborhoods and in their cities, and especially in the territories that are in the frontier line right now and the territories that are occupied right now. Those organizations, they always have problems with talking loudly about themselves. The first problem that they have, they actually don't know any English often. When we're talking about the small cities and the small villages of the eastern borders and south of Ukraine, many of those people are actually men and women who are in their 40s, 50s. They are volunteering, but they cannot, you know, speak English, so they use Google Translator to write, you know, those letters like, please give us medicine, please give us food. And sometimes those letters, they do look really funny, but that's not because they, you know, wanna look funny. It's because they don't know any English and they are trying to do their best. The other problem that we are having here is that many of those grassroots initiatives that are helping right now, they cannot be as visible as international organizations. And that is a problem because, of course, we do have to verify, we do have to check in order to trust. And as Ukrainian Volunteer Service, that's actually what we are doing. We are working with thousands of those local initiatives, and we are, you know, establishing this really deep connection, personal connection, to know that we have reasons to trust them, and not just, you know, give them medicine and food and stuff. And what we are seeing is that many of those people, especially again the ones who are on the frontier line, they're just afraid, you know, to post photos of the people whom they're helping or of themselves helping, because Russians, if they enter the city, those volunteers will be the first ones who will be kidnapped, who will be tortured, and who can not go home to their families. And again, volunteers are helping, they are doing that, they are posting photos because they know that they have to do this. But of course they're doing it against, you know, their own safety. And the third thing that is a challenge, of course, is that sometimes, like, when volunteers helping the soldiers, and I totally agree that helping our defenders is one of the most vital things that we have to do, it's really important, you know, to be an expert in helping the soldiers. Unfortunately, we have already had situations when volunteers who are trying to help, who are trying to bring help to soldiers and to civilians, actually did worse. They they posted those photos, and then the Russians found the positions of our defenders. Unfortunately, in our community, we have several volunteers who were killed while they were transferring the humanitarian help because Russians just shot the car, even though we had this big, words, volunteer, help. Russian soldiers just shot them when they were trying to enter the occupied city with the medicine, with the food. So my point in that is that, of course, we have to check, we have to verify, but again, we need to remember that Ukraine is in the war right now, at that very moment, and actually it's really important to look for those local initiatives and to donate to them. When I'm giving interviews, I always say that it's really important to donate clothes and food and, the stuff to big organizations who can make logistics, and bring it to Ukraine. But if you want to donate money, even the smallest amount, like $10, $20, it's better to donate it to a local organization because for them it will be more direct, more rapid help. And that's what I'm also asking you to do, to donate even small amounts of money. It's really important to donate small to local organizations and, of course, to look for trusted volunteers. We are posting different posts with those contacts of really local volunteers, and we can also provide you with contacts in the concrete region if you're interested, because again, for them, even the smallest amount is vital, and they will really fast turn it into help for people who need it the most in their region.
I just want to pick up on what you said because it's so important, and you're looking at it from within Ukraine, and all of us are looking at it from within Ukraine. And yesterday, if you were here for the president's speech and also for a panel before that on history and tyranny, we heard about Blue Check Ukraine, which I think comes at it from a different angle. We had Liev Schreiber here last night talking about it. Murphy Poindexter is here. And I think those kinds of, you definitely have something to talk about, folks, after this, meet with each other, because it's really important for organizations like Blue Check Ukraine, which is raising money globally and 100% passing it to Ukrainian NGOs getting the work done on the ground and vetting and verifying it using ropes and gray, using due diligence providers, so everyone knows that it's getting to where it needs to be. So I think that's really important on that issue. And Nick?
I just want to chime in on the question of how to find vetted organizations that are verified. Google it. On a serious note, if you're in America, it does help to go to sites like Charity Navigator or check with the IRS if the organization is 501c3 accredited. It's usually not a scam, and you can get tax write-off on your donation. So I do recommend at least that check. Don't pick a random, especially as an American or European, don't donate to a random organization. Ask a Ukrainian. We all know. Everyone is helping, everyone's volunteering, everyone knows a number of organizations. I want to recognize a couple of partners that I'm very grateful to, and I think you can also donate. That's Razom for Ukraine, Dora Khamyak, and Patience of Ukraine in Ukraine, Plast, Prosto Люди in Kharkiv, Kiev School of Economics, and just there's so many, too many to list. So, but ask someone who is volunteering and Google it.
I want to add also, every time when you get these videos about Ukraine stealing humanitarian aid, please fact check. That's what we started with. I have a lot of messages when people suspect, and I'm just like, check it. People like, in a supermarket, we saw your humanitarian aid. And I'm giving them instruction, go and check it. And they come back to me like, sorry, we were wrong. Every time when you see this video, do not share them, check them, because sharing them, sometimes you're sharing fake information. That's what we started with, and Paul mentioned that, sometimes it's a part of propaganda. So just fact check, Google, talk to Ukrainians, just like 3 advices how to give to verified organizations.
Thank you so much, Olga, and I know that Help Ukraine, you're trying also so hard to break a problem that is going to be the focus of the next question, and that's that we all know that billions of dollars have been raised outside of Ukraine. We all know that typically there's accredited international aid organizations to whom donors are comfortable giving this money. It's when I was called by Ukraine's leadership in March, the question was posed to me, we know that there's over $2 billion that has been raised, yet only tens of millions have come into Ukraine on the ground in the country. And that's I think, something that ultimately all of us volunteer and can do. Ukrainians can help Ukrainians, but also we do have to figure out how we can match these billions of dollars that are coming in to international aid organizations and the folks on the ground who are getting this done. So my question first is, Nick, tell us a bit, because you and I have talked about United 24, and I know you're really passionate also about, happy that the president launched this initiative. Tell me about what your thoughts are about United 24, and also how that segues into Nova Ukraine and the future of partnering with these kinds of initiatives to get more money in the ground in Ukraine from international donors.
That's an amazing question. First, not speaking here as a Googler, but speaking for Nova Ukraine and as a private person, it was disappointing to see that they chose to donate large amounts to United Nations organizations that didn't actually have ground operations in Ukraine, or International Red Cross that didn't do what should have been done. What I see going forward is you will have organizations like the ones on the stage and other organizations that are very active in the region and can get things done. And then you have big partners that get a lot of money. And we have to build bridges with them. And we have to help them distribute this help. We started doing that already, partnering with UNICEF. We will try to reach out to other large organizations and explain what we have in terms of logistics and how we know what the needs are, because we're talking directly to the ministries of Ukraine and as well as people on the ground. And sometimes you get completely different information if you talk to government officials and people on the ground. But we can correlate this information. As far as President Zelensky, amazing initiative, United 24, I'm all for it. I'm in support of it. I'm happy to see that they've raised over 30 million already, and that money is going directly into the government ministries' accounts responsible for rebuilding, infrastructure, medicine, and Збройні Сили України, which is something we cannot do. So I'm happy to partner more with United 24, and that's on my agenda to do here in Davos.
I just want to add, those who aren't here, you can attend the United 24 stand and you can learn more about how to donate and actually make a donation right here in Ukraine House Davos.
What is amazing is that you can actually donate to rebuild a bridge in Irpin, and you can see a piece of the broken bridge that has been brought here by the United 24 team and placed over there. And right beside, you can actually donate towards a new bridge that needs to be built there. It's pretty amazing. Thank you to the United 24 team. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce and ask for her remarks, an amazing woman, Tusha Havrilishin-Shmurhun, who has spent years in Ukraine, is a Swiss-Ukrainian businesswoman. She started Porcelana in Ukraine. She helped found Pechera School International, has spent the last 90 days in Ukraine under the air raid sirens, and has an initiative that she cares about, Move Ukraine, which is, I hope I got that name right, which is focused on temporary housing that isn't about corrugated containers, but something livable, hospitable, and sustainable.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have heard every one of you. I've heard about of course, I know you, Paul. Thank you so much, Nick. Heard about you all. First of all, I want to say that what I've heard today is and I want everybody to hear this. Whether you have, you're here, we decided to stay here, other people decided to leave. The most important is that everybody has taken responsibility to do what they can, whether it's inside, outside, together, with Ukrainians and with the world. So I really salute every one of you here. Yes, so Move Ukraine, we started, of course, like everybody, to try to address the emergency needs, get people to safety. We very quickly decided with my husband, since we were IDPs, because we had to move from Kiev to Lviv, that you have to choose something. And so, although personally we helped a lot of refugees in the first few weeks get out of the country, friends or relatives or by phone calls, we raised funds to address emergency needs, humanitarian aid, all kinds of other needs also for volunteers, civil and non-civil. But very quickly we understood that the situation of IDPs living in the lucky ones, the lucky IDPs, living in schools, for example. I've been to several villages where schools have opened their doors to IDPs, Villagers have brought beds, their pillows, their books for the kids. I've delivered pizza with a Scot man. There's incredible things happening, but it's not sustainable. You cannot live in a school because first, kids have to go back to school. And second of all, this winter, this fall, kids go back to school and it's simply too cold. So very quickly with my husband, John Smorhan, Andy Kuzic, who's also been in Ukraine for 20-some years, and a wonderful young architect and urban planner, we decided that we needed to move up the Maslow scale of needs and really think about not temporary, emergency housing, yes. So we have already built refurbished student dormitories. We are now refurbishing a hotel in Ivano-Frankivsk, but really think a bit beyond, and we didn't know what to call them. But we call them semi-permanent communities. Semi-permanent because for some it will be semi. For some they will be able to go back to central, northern, southern, and some parts of eastern Ukraine. But some will not be able to go back for years or might never go back. So we have to build something that is semi-permanent. There is the spatial, the housing. It will be prefab housing, most likely, other than refurbished buildings that we agreed to receive from municipalities. We will build in the cities on brownfields, out of the cities, near employment areas, on green fields. But it is very important. We will continue working with all the partners we've already worked with and anybody who wants to support us. For us, equally important is the social aspect, school, medicine, public transport, and economics. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We want to be able at this, there's no life if you're not working. There's no life if your kids aren't back to school. There's no life if you're not healthy. We don't want ghettos. We do not want ghettos. So, for example, there's a field kitchens that are offered to us that can serve 10,000 people a day. So I'm Swiss, I'm going to talk to École Hôtelière de Lausanne and say, why don't you bring your experts and train, instead of just feeding IDPs, train IDPs in the restaurant business, in the management business. And then we can do, thank you, microloans. I'm not a finance report person, but there's thankfully a couple in our team at this point. So this is what we are going to try to do in our small, we won't be able to do it for the 1.5 million or 2 million people that will not be able to go back home soon, we hope. But we'll do our best. We will do our best. So thank you so much.
And thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Those pilot project stories of success are so important. I think, Svetlana, we have time for
I think we have time for one question, Max, I guess. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question.
Hello, my name is Olga Litvinenko. I am a former Miss USA contestant and Miss Ukraine Universe contestant from Kiev, and I actually started 2 organizations when this happened as well, USA for Ukraine and Shield of Arms. And most recently we came into partnership, and 3 days ago, met with the mayor of Bucha, was there on the ground, came to Davos from Ukraine. And I get a little passionate when I talk about everything, but this morning I got an interesting phone call from my great aunt who I helped escape Kiev when there were bombings going off, and you can hear a lot of the sound in the background. And she called me crying because she wants to go home. She wants to go back to Kiev. And, you know, being back there, she saw me there and she saw me on the ground and she said, you know, it's starting to get better and I want to go home. I'm really really tired of being in, she's in France right now, little southern of France. And so she said this, and there's many more that are saying this. So I want to ask you from your experience and everybody that you've been dealing with and being on the ground, how do you feel about all the people that are ready to come back to Ukraine? Is it safe to come back? And how can also everybody else begin to help with that movement?
Well, maybe I'll jump in and try to comment. Well, first of all, there is a position from the Kyiv City Council, which is saying that it's not safe to come back yet. So it's not recommended yet to come back to and be there. I've been in Kyiv since the first day of war, and it's actually my first trip abroad since start of war. And I have to say that my personal suggestion would be, if you still have a place to stay abroad, maybe you should still wait a bit before the government tells you that it's safe now to come back. If, of course, it's not possible, you don't have money for it, you don't have an opportunity, that's another story. But if you do, maybe it's safer to wait. But, of course, you never can stop people who are willing to do. And I think there are thousands of coming back anyway now, and Kyiv is different now from the first day as it used to be. The city starts living more, but we cannot speak about security in any part of Ukraine yet, unfortunately.
Olga, please.
I'll just say very short thing. You know, I want to go back home every day and think what you're going to do there. If you know what you're going to do there, if you know how you can be there more efficient compared to where you are, go home, help your country from there. If you are more efficient where you are right now, providing more resources, more help where you are, stay where you are. Don't go there just to eat humanitarian aid and to be at home wearing your clothes. It'll happen one day. We're all coming back home. But just ask yourself, where I am the most efficient today? And stay there. This is my advice. But I'm not a military person. But I'm going to be there where I can be the most efficient.
Yeah, I would like to continue on that and absolutely agree with Ola. But also, what I'm thinking a lot is that, like, both choices are really hard, you know, to stay in Ukraine or to go, especially when you have family and small kids. And also, like, we are talking a lot about, like, physical safety, and it's not safe in many parts of Ukraine, like almost any part in Ukraine right now. But also, what's really important to understand is about psychological safety. 2 days ago, I was in Odessa. That's also my first trip out of Odessa since the start of the invasion. And in Odessa, it's in the south of Ukraine, we have air alarms like almost every single day and every single night. Every single night, me, my family, my neighbors, at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, have to wake up, listening to really loud alarm and church bells, and we have to run to a shelter. Every single day and every single night. Today, when I was waiting for my train from Klosters to Davos, I've heard a church bell. And literally, I almost like, I started shaking. It was just a church bell, like a normal thing. But for me, it was a sign that a missile can be going there. And I was like, okay, I need to calm down. So the one thing is actually physical safety. And of course, it's important to listen to our government and what military men are saying. But also, I know that for many people who have left Ukraine, it's really hard right now. They want to go back, but it's really hard for them, you know, to live in a country where you have air alarms, like almost all the time. When you have the news, like every single day, you hear that the missile hit somewhere, someone was killed and someone was injured. And you cannot escape that. Like even right now, being 2 days traveling, I'm still, you know, looking at the news and I'm saying like, okay, the missile hit that city. I have a friend there. I need to check if they're okay. So, like my advice would be, if you're not feeling really strong, like on a psychological level, it's better to stay somewhere when you feel calmer. Because in Ukraine right now, in any city, we need people who are ready to work, you know, who are ready to volunteer, who are ready, you know, to do something, and not just, you know, like feeling nervous and, you know, like just trying to process everything that happens.
In my house, personally, in San Francisco, I have 2 refugees living from the Kyiv region. And I talk to them every day. And when they ask about coming back, I say, absolutely not. It's not time yet. Just hang tight. Ukraine has not won yet. But we will win. There is no doubt in my mind that Ukraine will win. And there should be no doubt in your minds that Ukraine will win and defeat the Russian army and reclaim all of the territories. So the cost of that is great, and we don't know when the war will end. But we're working together, we can reduce that cost on the humanitarian side and bring that victory closer so Ukraine can win faster and can bring people home.
Nick, I just want to pick up on, I'm pretty direct about this when asked, and of course, our employees are asking, they want to go home. Portfolio companies, they're people who are outside. We have 26,000 people through the portfolio companies. Lots of their spouses, children are outside of Ukraine. Don't come back yet. And I say that very strongly because Ukraine has got to oust the invaders. Ukraine has limited reserves. Fuel. Fuel needs to go to the army. It needs to go to humanitarian heroes who are bringing essential aid. It does not need to go to folks who are driving around Kiev. This is not the time. I'm sorry. This is not the time. There are plenty of resources outside of Ukraine, in Poland or in Romania, all over the world, who are helping the country. Thank them for those resources and let the military oust the invaders, and don't let your family and friends be the human shields that they need. We need to liberate those cities.
So before we end up this panel, we want to show you a short film about humanitarian heroes in Ukraine. Please.
Bravery is forgetting about yourself. No, you're not hungry. No, you don't need a rest. Everything is fine. You will manage it without sleep. They won't. Deliver a car to the front line. Unload a truck with humanitarian aid. Find 200 bulletproof vests overnight. Work with a raped kid. You can handle it. Because you saw their eyes. You listened to their stories. You felt their pain like it's yours. It is yours. So now you look for any open door. Or you knock. For days. Until it opens. You do anything possible for them. Even if it's never enough.
Let's give a round of applause to those helping.